In this video, I'm going to be discussing the differences between the Bravo Company full auto bolt carrier group in phosphate and the Spikes Tactical full auto bolt carrier group, both for the AR platform. Now, I don't have a Spikes phosphate finish AR to use for this review, so I'm using a nickel boron one. The exact makeup of the bolt carrier group, the Spikes bolt carrier group, is exactly the same. The only difference is the finish. So all the specifications on the phosphate one are the same as the nickel boron. Just keep that in mind. Now, I've had quite a few people ask me about bolt carrier groups and which ones are better, and it's, you know, once you start getting up into the top tier manufacturers, you're just not going to find a lot of differences in these bolt carrier groups. If the manufacturer is building the bolt carrier group to full military specifications and you're looking at, you know, a full auto versus a semi-auto bolt carrier group, you know, if everything is 1-to-1, you're going to find very little difference. So that's what I found looking at the Bravo Company phosphate finish bolt carrier group and the Spikes Tactical bolt carrier group in phosphate. They are both built to full military specifications. So the big difference, though, is the price. So that's something to keep in mind. The Bravo Company, you're going to end up, you know, you're going to be paying roughly $189 for the Bravo Company phosphate one, and for the Spikes in phosphate finish, you're looking at probably between, depending upon where you buy it, you're looking at between $145 to about $160. So it is less money if you're looking at the Spikes. Now, the Spikes in nickel boron runs, depending upon where you buy it, of course, 200 to 220. So in nickel boron, this is only a little bit, you know, say you can get this for 200, that's only $10 more than this Bravo Company in the phosphate finish. To me, in my personal opinion, I'll spend the $10 extra and get the nickel boron finish. I mean, everything on this is nickel boron. The bolt, the carrier key, everything. And if you're not familiar with the nickel boron finish and what advantage that gives you in your rifle, do some YouTube searches for Fail Zero, which is the company that actually plates these for Spikes, and look at some of the videos online of different people who've tested these things and run thousands of rounds through them with no lubrication at all in their rifle. It's lots of reading out there, lots of videos. I can't say enough about the nickel boron finish. Now, what I can say is I sure wish Bravo Company made this with the nickel boron finish. That's the only thing in their lineup that, in my opinion, they're lacking. You know, they need a nickel boron plated bolt carrier group and bolt. And it would also be nice if they offered, you know, a trigger in a nickel boron like Spikes does. If you're familiar with Bravo Company, they manufacture a AR called the Jack Carbine, which uses this bolt, of course. The Jack Carbine uses an ALG trigger group, an ALG ACT trigger group, and that is a nickel boron, nickel Teflon combination. So I think Bravo Company is aware of the benefits because they're obviously using that trigger group in a gun that they manufacture. But they're not actually offering a Bravo Company branded trigger group or bolt carrier group in the nickel boron, which I think they should do. So moving on, So we're, for the purpose of this, just assume that this is a phosphate finish Spikes bolt carrier group. Let's start with the carriers. The specs for both of these, the Bravo company and the Spikes, are virtually identical. The carrier is mil spec 8620 steel. The full auto design, obviously, with the shrouded firing pin. For the most part, I'm only going to say this once because I don't want to repeat it over and over. 5.3.1.2 mil standard -171 phosphate finish. Okay, both carrier groups adhere to that mil spec standard for finishing. Phosphate is inside and out. Hard chrome bores. Mil spec tool steel carrier key. Finished inside and out with a hard chrome bore also. Carrier keys are attached with grade 8 USA made hardware and staked per mil spec. Bolts are CNC machined Carpenter 158 steel. Very important there. They're also phosphate finished inside and out. Bolts are shot peened per mil spec. That's also important. The extractor is tool steel, and that's also shot peened and phosphate finished inside and out. On the Spikes bolt carrier group, it is fitted with a mil spec black ejector spring insert and Viton O-ring. Now, Bravo Company says that their ejector is fitted with a Bravo Company ejector spring and comes with a crane O-ring. On the Bravo Company, the O-ring actually is not installed. This is the plastic bag that the Bravo Company bolt carrier group comes in, and you can see down at the bottom there's a separate section of the bag, and there is the crane O-ring included in the bag. Now, I did call Bravo Company and ask them why the O-ring is not installed. They said it's not needed because of the BCM ejector spring that they use. The O-ring is included anyway if for some reason the ejector is not working correctly, maybe with the type of ammunition you're using, steel case, something like that, you can install the O-ring. So that's what Bravo Company told me when I inquired. So the cam pins are all mil spec, phosphate coated and so on. Firing pins are hard chrome to mil spec and so on. That's pretty much the run through on the specifications. Jumping over to the bolt, this is what separates most bolt carrier groups. When you look at a $100 bolt carrier group versus the $140 to $160 phosphate Spikes or the $189 Bravo Company, what you're basically looking at is the bolt. You may have an 8620 bolt or a 9320 or 9340 steel bolt. Both are not mil specs for bolts. Or you might find one that's a Carpenter 158, which is the proper material for the bolt, and that's mil spec. But they're not individually magnetic particle inspected and high pressure tested. They might be batch tested. Batch testing is they might do 50 or 100 bolts and pull out one and run the test on it. So they're not individually tested. So that's another thing to pay attention to. Both the Spikes and the Bravo Company, each of their bolts are individually high pressure tested and magnetic particle inspected. And the bolts will carry that stamping. If they're individually tested, you'll find that actually stamped on the bolt. You know, we'll look at this. I'm going to take these apart. I'm not sure if the camera is going to want to focus. It's always wants to be complicated. And of course, it doesn't appear to want to focus. I'll get this in focus when I take the bolt out. But basically, the bolt is stamped HP and MP on it to let you know that they're individually tested. So now the last talking point I have is the Bravo company's bolt carrier groups are assembled and inspected, and they're actually put in a gun and they're fired. And you can tell this when you get a Bravo company a bolt carrier and you take it out of the bag. You may find some residue. They don't clean it. Oil and marks on the carrier of it being installed. Like, for example, right here, you've got some of the phosphate finishes rubbed off. And this is basically due to it being installed in a rifle and being test fired. And Bravo Company does say that on their website. Now, Spikes, on the other hand, does not say that they individually fire each bolt carrier. And out of all of the Spikes bolt carrier groups that I've installed and I've used in my own rifles, both phosphate ones and the nickel boron ones, I've never found any handling marks to give me the impression that it was installed in a rifle and it was test fired. I've also not found any type of residue that would indicate a test firing. So, maybe they do test fire them and then they take them out and clean them real well. I don't know, but they don't say that they test fire them. And out of all the ones that I've received, I've never seen any evidence that they've test fired them. So, is that a big deal? Well, no, not really. I don't think it is, at least. Also, when dealing with Spikes and dealing with Bravo Company, one of the things I noticed, not that it's an important thing, but Bravo Company gives you a lot more free stuff when you buy something from them, if you're into that sort of thing. In the background here are some items that came with this bolt carrier group, which is a mouse pad that says Bravo Company Combat Effective, Bravo Company Manufacturing, and a couple of Bravo Company stickers. I don't see the same type of free stuff from Spikes, but again, that's not a, it depends on if that kind of stuff's important to you. I'm just surprised at how much free stuff Bravo Company gives you. I bought an upper from them not too long ago, and it came with a whole bunch of magazines and promotional literature and NRA stuff and stickers and mouse pad, and they gave me a free hat as well. So you don't get that level of free stuff from Spikes. So that's just an observation. It's not a criticism by any means. I mean, free is free. I'm not buying Bravo Company stuff because they're giving me stickers or a mouse pad or a hat. I'm buying it because it's quality product. So it's just something that I'm mentioning. I'm just not used to getting so much free stuff from a manufacturer when I buy something from them. So I think I've got all the talking points covered between the two bolt carrier groups. I'm going to take these apart so we can take a look at the individual components and kind of compare them side by side. Okay, the first thing we're going to take a look at are the disassembled bolts. And I've got everything moved out of the way, hoping that my camera will cooperate so you can see the Bravo Company bolt that I have in my hand, you can see the BCM logo, and you can see the stampings HP and MP. Hopefully you can see them. It looks like it's focused on my end. So those are the stampings to indicate that this bolt has been individually magnetic particle inspected and high pressure tested. And you can see I've got the ejector removed, not the ejector pin. I still have the ejector pin in there. And you can see there's definitely some marks there from this bolt being fired. When I did take the entire bolt carrier group apart, it was dirty, and I did clean it up. So now on the spikes, obviously I don't have a phosphate one to show you. This would be much easier to see on the phosphate one. You may not be able to see this, but right about in this area, it is stamped ST for Spikes Tactical, and says HPT MPI on it. And that obviously would be easier to see if this was a phosphate bolt. So this one, obviously, this is a brand new bolt carrier group, this Spikes. There's a little bit of oil on the inside of the bolt, and there was some oil on the firing pin, very light amount. No evidence of this being test fired, no residual, nothing residual at all. No type of handling marks or anything like that. So those are the two bolts. Alright, here's the two bolt carriers disassembled. The Bravo Company cam pin, firing pin, and the ejector had had plenty of oil on them, and there was evidence of them being fired as well. So on the carrier, you can see that it is chrome lined, and the Spikes phosphate bolt carrier is also the same way. So the I don't really see anything worth talking about with the firing pins. The firing pins are the mil-spec stainless steel cam pins. One thing I did notice is taking apart the bolts, the pin for the Bravo Company bolt, the pin that holds the ejector in, came out extremely easy. The Spikes, obviously I had to use my roll pin punch and hammer to get it out. It's had a lot of pressure on it, so that definitely did not come out easy. And I've noticed that with pretty much all the Spikes I've taken apart. The roll pin that holds the ejector into the bolt does not come out easy on the Spikes. Now this is probably, on the Bravo Company, this is probably the 5th or 6th, I'm not sure, somewhere in that range, 5 or 6 bolt carrier groups I've taken apart, and they all, the pin comes out of the bolt on these fairly easy. And Oh, gonna lose parts here. Okay. This isn't easy. This is not easy for me to show on the camera, and with my track record of cameras not focusing on things. I'll try and get the well, I'll come back to the ejectors in just a moment here. Back to the focusing problem again. I don't have anything else to share with you about the other components, the firing pins. I looked at them both pretty closely. I mean, if you got them mixed up, you wouldn't be able to tell a Spikes from a Bravo company. Let me get this stuff out of the way here, and we'll talk about the actual ejector. Alright, if I get everything out of the background here, I can get the camera to focus on these items in the near field. This is the Bravo company ejector removed from the bolt, and you can see that it is indeed only has the ejector spring on it, and that ejector spring is it's a pretty big spring. And if you compare that to the Spikes, and you can see the Spikes has their Viton O-ring on it. Let me remove the O-ring from the Spikes so you can see the two ejectors. Okay, I've got the Spikes in my left hand, and I've got the Bravo in my right, and you can see if I put these right up next to each other there, you can see that the Bravo company spring is a bit taller than the Spikes. And I was off camera playing around with these a little bit and pressing down on them, and it would appear to me, it's not scientific of course, but it would appear to me that the Bravo company spring is stiffer than the spring on the Spikes tactical ejector. Now, given that I fired both of these with 55 grain, 62 grain, brass case, steel case, you know, I didn't personally experience any issues with the ejector not pulling out a cartridge, anything of that nature. Both of these worked, you know, for the different types of ammunition that I've tried. One thing I did not try is taking the Bravo company ejector and putting their crane O-ring on it and trying that. You know, that's definitely not an experiment that I did. But anyway, I think this is going to wrap up this video. Concerning the Spikes Tactical Bolt Carrier Group versus the Bravo Company Bolt Carrier Group, and the differences that I've been able to find. If you're going to purchase either one of these, I can't see you having any problems in your rifle with any type of ammunition that you choose to run. So I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out what you want to buy for your rifle.